Good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us today to celebrate the launch of an important new collaborative effort to combat human trafficking in the Puget Sound region. My name is Courtney Gregoire. I'm a Port of Seattle commissioner here, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to SeaTac International Airport. We are here today during National Human Trafficking Awareness Month because we all agree that human trafficking can and must be stopped. We can all do more to stop trafficking and save lives. Key to our success in that effort is partnerships, which is why we are so pleased to be joined today by so many regional leaders who are committed to working together on this important issue. Although slavery is commonly thought of a thing of the past, each year millions of men, women, and children are trafficked in countries all around the world, including the United States. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, there were 8,524 human trafficking cases reported in 2017. As of June 2018, there were 5,147 cases reported. Those numbers are staggering. Even here in our state, we are not immune from the problem. Washington State currently has the 12th highest call volume to the National Human Trafficking Hotline for 2018. And in King County, as many as between 300 to 500 individuals under 18 are exploited every night, some as young as 11 years old. We've learned that our airport is not immune when we discovered that it has been used as a pickup and drop-off point for victims of human trafficking until some of the perpetrators were brought down in a sting operation in 2015. We all must do our part to see an end to human trafficking. The Port of Seattle is committed to addressing this issue, leveraging our roles as a county-wide government, a large employer, and a manager of significant trade and travel facilities. We want to make sure that places like SeaTac Airport, our international cruise terminals, and our marinas are not used as transit points for traffickers and their victims. And we want to help educate the more than 50 million annual visitors to these facilities to join in our fight to end trafficking in our region. This is why, last January, my Port Commission colleagues and I passed a motion committing our organization to implementing a multifaceted approach to fight human trafficking, updating our policies, training our Port of Seattle employees, and other partners. We are well on our way to successfully implementing that strategy, and this regional awareness campaign is key to that effort. Right here at SeaTac alone, if we can better inform and engage the 47 million annual passengers who travel through this facility and the 20,000 people who work here, we will be able to identify victims sooner, intervene more effectively in a trauma-informed manner, and start to reduce both the supply and demand sides of the problem. Add to that our other partners standing with us today, and our region can be a national leader to fight human trafficking. In fact, we believe this is the first time in the country that a major city, county, port, transit, and private sector agencies have come together on this very important topic. This campaign will consist of posters and ads like the ones you see right here. They'll be placed at the Port of Seattle Airport, maritime facilities, in the City of Seattle parks and libraries, in King County public health clinics, and on metro buses. In addition, we would like to thank the many cities here in King County that have partnered with us in issuing Human Trafficking Awareness Month proclamations and posting those messages in their cities. Finally, I'd like to thank our private sector partners, Delta, Alaska, Expedia, Uber, Lyft, and the Snohomish County Lodging Association. We welcome any other organizations who are interested in joining us to raise awareness and help fight human trafficking in our region. With that, let me turn things over to some of our other guests today. To start, I'm pleased to introduce King County Executive and Sound Transit Board Member, Dow Constantine.
Thank you, Commissioner Gregoire. Today, we stand united. Public, private, nonprofit sectors joining forces to stop labor and sex trafficking in our region. It is a horrific crime, a crime that preys on those who are the most vulnerable, including people who are experiencing homelessness, with traffickers often targeting people of color. Even here in the progressive Pacific Northwest, an untold number of people are exploited for labor or sex and pushed into the shadows of the community we share. The public awareness campaign we're launching today expands a successful effort that the King County Council led in 2013, and I'm pleased to see Council members Cole-Wells, Dunn, and Balducci here with us today. Now, that campaign dramatically increased the number of people who are reaching out for help, who called the hotline and got that help. 63% increase in just the first year. Today, we're applying that same effective approach at a much larger scale with a much broader coalition of partners. We're pleased to have the Port of Seattle, Sound Transit, the City of Seattle, and other local cities, along with private sector partners including Alaska Airlines, Delta Airlines, Expedia, Uber, Lyft, the Snohomish County Lodging Association, and others. Together, we're sending a clear message throughout the region to victims and to survivors. If you need help, call, text, go to the website. We can connect you with a champion. We can connect you with advocacy, with nonprofits who can provide medical care, financial assistance, housing, and other resources you need. And if you believe that a coworker, a friend, a neighbor, anyone is being exploited for labor or sex, call the hotline and get advice on how you can help. We will apply an all-hands-on-deck approach at King County, placing resource signs in each of our transit vehicles and at more than 100 workplaces, Metro and Sound Transit buses, King County public health clinics, King County parks, Link light rail trains, sheriff's offices, public defender's offices, courts, and everywhere we provide services to the people of King County. At each of those locations, our dedicated employees, nearly 15,000 strong, stand ready to help survivors get the assistance they need. We know what works. Our successful campaign a few years ago provides an effective model. By bringing that approach to a regional scale, by adding additional partners, and a promise to renew it every January during National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, we will help even more survivors break free and thrive once again. I know we will succeed again because we have the dedicated employees, the strong partnerships, and the shared commitment to stop labor and sex trafficking in our region once and for all. Thank you to each of our partners who are joining in today's launch for their lasting commitment to this ongoing work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Executive Constantine. We will now hear from two members of the King County Council, Regan Dunn, followed by Jeannie Cole-Wells.
Thank you, Commissioner Gregoire. I want to start with this quote. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. You know who said that? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And on the eve of our national holiday, as we celebrate his work in equal rights and freedom across the country for all, I want to talk about human trafficking just briefly, if I might. I want to thank everyone, all of the partners that are here today behind me, the Port of Seattle, the City of Seattle, Sound Transit, Alaska Airlines, Delta Airlines, Snohomish Lodging Association, Expedia, Uber, Lyft, Metro, and many, many others for being here. I was part of a roundtable on recent issues, current and upcoming issues that was put forward by the Aspen Institute Rodell Fellowship not very many years ago. And as we were talking about this issue, as it came up, I was sitting next to the Attorney General from Wisconsin, a friend of mine, and we brought up the idea, the point that there is a form of modern day slavery domestic servitude, sexual trafficking that's happening today. And one of the mayors of a major city, the size of Seattle, had never heard of this issue, not even at all. And it goes to show you how important and how the least understood this problem is. And I can tell you, as a former federal prosecutor who's prosecuted these types of crimes and sex crimes, I can tell you, I've witnessed firsthand the devastation they cause. So that's why during my time on the council, we've made it a priority, along with Councilmember Coe-Wells and Councilmember Balducci and others. We, back in 2013, launched a regional anti-trafficking effort and a public awareness campaign. And it's to respond to, in part, to what this mayor didn't know about. You can't fix a problem if you don't know about it. And that's the whole point of why we're here today. We saw, as Executive Constantine mentioned, a huge increase as a result of that campaign to the 1-800 hotline call number. So substantial that the results were impressive, but it had nowhere near the backing of the people that stand with me here today. And the whole point in us standing together today, shoulder to shoulder, is so that the public will stand together shoulder to shoulder to make outreach on this very important issue. So as we build on this initial outreach and this launch, we know we're doing it right because it worked the first time. And we've got unanimous county council legislation that will help put this campaign into action today. One final comment before I hand this over. I want to say thank you to all of our TSA agents and other federal employees here at SeaTac Airport today who are still working without getting paid. And I'm deeply sorry for the hardship you are enduring as the government shutdown continues. And I call on both political parties in D.C. to find the will to end this shutdown soon, because it will help us in the mission that we are working on today as well, if we are fully, perfectly staffed. So we must remain vigilant in our efforts to bring justice. Sorry, guys, got to catch my flight. We must continue to remain vigilant, and I want to again thank our players for being here today and look forward to broad-based bipartisan support of this very important issue.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gregoire, for your comments and for inviting me and others to speak here today. I'm Jean Coe-Wells. I represent the 4th Council District on the King County Council. And months ago, Councilmember Dunn approached me with the idea of reviving the campaign that had occurred through the efforts of King County in 2013 and 14. And we actually had the council pass unanimously a motion to recreate that and what is before us now. We also passed legislation last fall and in the budget, along with the work of Councilmember Balducci, who is here today, and all of our other council members, to do all we can to make sure that the scourge of human trafficking does not continue. Knowledge is power, and with that power can come security, safety, the ability to become a survivor rather than a victim, the ability, hopefully, to avoid becoming a victim in the first place. And that's what this awareness campaign is all about. To make sure that all individuals and groups and businesses in our communities throughout King County know about human trafficking and what can be done to prevent it. But key as well is to make sure that if anyone in the community knows of someone who may be victimized by the scourge, that there is help to be provided. There's a toll-free nationwide hotline. There are resources that can be obtained. And this goes, of course, for those who are in the horrible situation of being victimized and exploited themselves. King County, the port, all the jurisdictions here have been real leaders, as has been the state of Washington. And one thing that was said by Councilmember Dunn just now really resonated with me. We have to be able to get that help, but that too many people do not know about human trafficking. When we embarked, when we embarked on our legislation back in 2002, the first state in the country to do anything about human trafficking, thanks to the early leadership of then State Representative Velma Valora, two other individuals, Dr. Sutapa Basa, director of the UW Women's Center, and Emma Katagi with what's now called API Chaya, brought this situation, this issue, this compelling phenomenon that we had to attack legislatively. But what most legislators said was, what is human trafficking? They thought we meant drug trafficking. They did not understand, and then the next reaction, which still continues today, is it doesn't happen here. It happens far off in other countries. One of the bills that we passed associated with the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in British Columbia in 2010, was to have posters. And the legislature had to authorize that posters could be put up. This is a small one. And this was to be placed only in rest stops on our major highways to keep people from being trafficked up to Vancouver for the Winter Games. Well, working with then Attorney General Rob McKenna for the state, we went on from there, and a lot has happened. But where it's at is locally. That's where we can make a real difference. And what we're doing today with the help of our partners is going to make that difference. And I'd like to acknowledge before I end that it's our community organizations. They're the ones who have their eyes on what is happening. They're the ones who are able to come to the public policy makers and say, this is what's going on, this is what's being done, this is what is needed from government, from the private sector, from everyone, to make a difference so that we can get people into productive lives and to be able to escape their horrible situations. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. And again, thank you, Councilmember Balducci, for joining us. I'd now like to ask King County Sheriff Mitzi Johanknick to talk a little bit about the sheriff's initiatives to combat human trafficking.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to be here. And what a tough act to follow. Councilmember Colwell's, Councilmember Dunn, everyone else here, Councilmember Balducci, executive. Without their work over many, many years to help bring human trafficking to the forefront, and those people that work with in the community every day, thank you for the work that's being done to intersect and stop human trafficking, not only in King County, but across the state, across the nation, and around the world. I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful for all the valued partners in this campaign to just be one small segment in law enforcement. And over the course of my career, I've worn a lot of ribbons on my uniform, but I'm really proud to wear this ribbon of blue today. It is traditionally a color of law enforcement that we embrace, and so I'm honored to wear this ribbon. By raising awareness of human trafficking, it's our hope that we can slow it down, but also bring to the forefront dark crime of sex trafficking. For some time now, King County has been a national leader fighting the illegal sex trade. There's a principle we in law enforcement know very well, and that principle is that you have to be creative and innovative to stay ahead of organized criminal activity, or they will adapt their behaviors and methods to stay one step ahead of us. And so we are constantly working with our partners to stay one step ahead, and hopefully over time win the battle. And this, what you see before you in this campaign, is one of the steps in the process. The King County Sheriff's Office, we will proudly put up posters in our buildings and in vehicles where we can. Recently, two of our detectives, I'd like to point out, Luke Hillman and Mike Garski, received a national award for their work on Operation No Impunity, which used innovative evidence collection and techniques to put a significant dent in the region's sex trade. This multi-agency team focused on sex buyers as facilitators of the ugly trade. The networks these buyers use, the back pages of newspapers and websites, were held accountable for enabling the exploitation of human beings and allowing human trafficking to flourish. By shining a light on the abusers, we are decreasing the demands and increasing the changes that we and opportunities to help us rid our county and society of these awful crimes. I thank you for being here today, and I'm proud to stand with these people. Thank you.
And now for the perspective from the Seattle Police Department, Assistant Seattle Police Chief Steve Herzak.
Thank you, Commissioner Gregoire. Human trafficking is a hidden crime. Victims are often reluctant or unable to come forward. It may take months or even years for a victim to communicate their plight. When they do, it's typically a community member or a community-based organization that's the first line of contact. Community support is integral to the successful outcome of trafficking cases. This awareness campaign, the awareness it will generate, is immeasurable. Traffickers exert control of their victims through surveillance, threats of violence to themselves and to their family members, through isolation, and by instilling fear of law enforcement or others who might assist them. Trafficking cases typically involve someone brought to the United States under false pretenses and forced into labor or the sex trade. Victims are helpless to leave, trapped by threat and coercion. Human trafficking is a crime that doesn't know borders or boundaries. The Seattle Police Department efforts are heavily dependent on local, county, state, and federal law enforcement partnerships. We have a team of detectives that specialize in this work, including a grant-funded, full-time dedicated detective exclusively dedicated to labor trafficking investigations. Our detectives investigate dozens of sex and labor trafficking cases every year in the city of Seattle. And sadly, for every case we investigate, there are countless others that go unreported. We've seen personally at SPD foreign nationals forced into labor in the United States with victims from such nations as Micronesia, Somalia, El Salvador, India, and the Philippines. We work closely with translators and court-certified interpreters who are essential to our work. Many of our traffic cases involve forced factory work, domestic servitude, and forced restaurant labor. One case SPD involved locally even involved a woman that was forced to panhandle in areas throughout King County for over a decade. The traffickers keep our victims' money, and they keep them under close surveillance, force them to work under counterfeit identification, and threaten to have victims deported or arrested if they try to escape or reach out to law enforcement. If you believe someone may be the victim of trafficking, please call 911. If you want more information before you feel comfortable calling the police, consider engaging the person in meaningful conversation. You can ask them things like if they like their job or how they get to work, or if they're even free to leave. Look around you. Does anything feel out of the ordinary, or does the manager seem like they're a looming presence over this employee? If the person works in the service industry, are they receiving their tips directly, or is someone else collecting their tips? Does the business have proper licensing displayed to know that they're a legitimate inspected business? If you're in doubt, call us. We're trained to investigate these. We're committed to eliminating human trafficking, and we'll pursue these cases relentlessly, but we need your help, and together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And now I would like to hear from Alaska Airlines Managing Director of Airports, Shelley Parker.
Good morning, and thank you so much again for the opportunity. I'm proud to stand here alongside our partners at the Port of Seattle, King County, and the City of Seattle to help raise the awareness around human trafficking. We recognize that when human trafficking involves air travel, flight attendants are often the first line of defense in identifying and reporting potential trafficking situations. Knowing this, we implemented training for flight attendants on human trafficking in 2015 as part of their required recurrent training. At the time, I was responsible for flight attendant training, and I was glad to be part of a group that was active in establishing training, defining our internal reporting processes, and our responses. We also supported earlier internal awareness campaigns. We took a very grassroots approach focused on educating our teams on the issue and how they could make a difference. Safety is our top priority. As a company, we're committed to providing our employees with the resources they need to enable a safe environment on our aircraft. In addition to ensuring that our flight crews are compliant with the training required by the FAA, we've partnered with organizations such as the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign, which focuses on identifying and reporting suspected human trafficking situations to federal law enforcement. International Air Transportation Association recently launched the Eyes Open Awareness campaign, and it focuses on training around detection and reporting and sharing best practices across the industry. We have flight attendants and employees who are personally passionate about this subject and actively engaged in promoting human trafficking prevention through awareness and work in industry organizations such as the Airline Ambassadors International. This is a nonprofit partnership with the airline industry to advocate for the awareness of human trafficking across our aviation industry. Alaska Airlines' commitment to the safety of our guests goes beyond the doors of our aircraft. Alaska has a strong track record of providing support for more than a decade, both financially and through donations of flight to several of the local nonprofit organizations who are working to stop human trafficking and to support the survivors and the families who have been impacted. We're really proud of this meaningful work, and we like to support the communities in which we serve. Some organizations that we wanted to call out include the International Rescue Committee, and their fundraising efforts help to provide food, clothing, shelter, and healthcare, and other vital resources to survivors of human trafficking. We've also supported the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation out of Portland and the Vancouver area that focuses on education and preventing violence and exploitation of women. And the newly created Real Escape from Sex Trade, which launched last year in Seattle. I want to thank our leaders at the Port of Seattle, King County, and the City of Seattle for their leadership in raising awareness with the traveling public. As the largest carrier at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, we're committed to providing the training and resources and partnership we need to make a significant difference in our industry and in this, our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley and Alaska Airlines. I would like to invite Delta Airlines Vice President Tony Gonchar to share a little bit about Delta's work.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm proud to be here today representing Delta's 80,000 employees on this very important topic. I want to first thank King County, City of Seattle, Port of Seattle, Executive Constantine, Council Members Cole, Wells, and Dunn, and Commissioner Gregoire for their leadership on this issue and the opportunity to partner today as we take a stand. We're taking a stand because as one of the world's largest airlines, we have a responsibility to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. 71% of human trafficking victims report flying on a plane while being recruited to be trafficked, and almost 40% of victims have flown at least once during their period of exploitation. It's a dark topic, but we refuse to turn a blind eye. And that is why we have been leading the charge in anti-human trafficking efforts among airlines and other corporations. Delta has been deeply engaged in this issue since 2011, when we were the first and only airline to sign on to the Code of Conduct created by EPPAT, an anti-human trafficking organization. Our CEO, Ed Bastian, is passionate about this issue, so our drive to end human trafficking reaches from the C-suite throughout every division at Delta. As Ed says, this issue is our line in the sand. And here in Seattle, we're proud to support the awareness campaign developed by our partners at King County, City of Seattle, and the Port of Seattle, and have stood alongside King County Council members Cole Wells and Dunn back in July of last year when the council introduced the motion supporting funding for this campaign. The campaign signage that will be posted at SeaTac Airport and throughout King County is the perfect complement to the signs Delta has displayed at its Atlanta hub and that will be rolled out in Seattle and other hub airports throughout 2019, which display a potential trafficking scenario, teach the public common indicators, and highlight the hotline number. For Delta, there are 5 focuses in this fight: training, volunteering, legislation, customer involvement, and partnerships. More than 56,000 Delta people have been trained, enabling them to remain alert on possible trafficking situations in airports, flights, and where they live and travel. We currently offer opportunities in 13 different cities, including Seattle, for employees to volunteer locally, supporting survivors. In March, we launched a mileage donation program with Polaris, allowing our extended Delta family to join us in the fight against human trafficking and donate miles to provide critical services for victims and survivors. And we're matching their donations up to 3 million miles with approximately 500,000 miles donated since the launch. In 2017, we donated $1 million to our partner Polaris to fund the National Human Trafficking Hotline for 5 years. The hotline receives calls from victims or community members who detect signs of trafficking and plots each report on a heat map to work with law enforcement and effectively determine locations. And for the first time, Delta has launched an in-flight video created to engage our customers on board, and we've placed indicators of human trafficking in January's issue of Sky magazine, which also includes an interview with Jada Pinkett Smith on her advocacy work around this issue. Throughout these actions, we say to survivors, we see you, we are with you, and we are fighting for you. And we send a clear message to the traffickers: stay off our planes and out of our airports. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Very well said. As you see, we have a lot of partners in this fight. My work at Microsoft for the last 5 years, I've thought about how to develop tools and technology to help intervene in human trafficking. But there's one thing that I know: the best way to help a victim become a survivor is by talking with someone who's walked in their shoes and working with someone on the ground. It's why I'm really pleased to invite our last speaker, Washington Anti-Trafficking Response Network Senior Program Coordinator and Trafficking Survivor, Swamirs Pireno Guzman, who has a master's in psychology, and will talk about his work.
Good morning. What an incredible opportunity to be in front of you all today. As I chair, I am the Senior Program Coordinator on the Anti-Trafficking Program at the International Rescue Committee in Seattle. In 2004, the International Rescue Committee in Seattle, a nonprofit organization that welcomes and helps refugee and immigrant families in the Puget Sound area, realized the need to respond to the needs of victims and survivors of human trafficking. IRC created the Washington Anti-Trafficking Response Network, or also known as WARN, to support victims of all forms of human trafficking. WARN helps survivors access resources and works to support survivors to overcome the trauma they have experienced and achieve their goals. IRC recognizes the great strength and resilience that survivors bring and honor their courage and desire to build a life without exploitation. We value and celebrate survivors' autonomy and self-determination. Just 14 years ago, I too was a victim of human trafficking. At age 14 years old, traffickers preyed on my vulnerabilities. A child who had been impacted by abuse, abandoned, and neglected. 57 scars mark my body of the abuse I had endured at the hands of my father. Poor and in need, I was an easy prey, and soon I found myself at the hands of human traffickers and became a victim of human trafficking in San Diego. During my trafficking situation, I was kept locked, fed one plate of food a day, and forced to take drugs. I was taken out of my human trafficking situation and placed in the foster care system in California, a system that was not designed to care for a child that had experienced that much trauma, and especially not designed to care for a child, an immigrant kid who had experienced that level of trauma. I had no control over what was happening around me, but I had control in one thing, my education. I found refuge in school and what was going into my head. Today, I stand in front of you as a licensed behavioral psychologist and a leader of the Washington Anti-Trafficking Response Network, and I directly support advocates across our network that includes API Chaya, Youth Care, and REST, and ensure our services are guided by the needs and empowerment of those that we serve each day. I applaud the efforts of the city, the King County, and the Port of Seattle, and our corporate partners here today in supporting survivors of all forms of human trafficking, immigrants and US citizens, male, female, and all gender identity, and those who identify as LGBTQ+. We thank the Seattle Police Department for their long-standing relationship with IRC and WARN, and for its commitment to a trauma-informed, person-centered approach on responding to all forms of human trafficking, and especially on supporting Detective Megan Bruneau in her work responding to labor trafficking, an under-recognized issue in our community. To those that are currently being victimized, reach out, seek help, tell someone, we are here for you. Freedom is possible. To survivors of human trafficking, speak up, share your knowledge, join the movement, and above all, know that you are strong and we believe in you. A personal thanks to Swedish Medical Center for responding to the medical needs of survivors of human trafficking, and to our continued partnership with them. To the community watching this today, if you are a medical service provider and are able to provide medical, dental, and vision care for survivors of human trafficking, give us a call, 206-900-7708. Again, please give us a call at 206-900-7708. Thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you very much. We have time for a couple questions. And then I cut it off really quick if no one asks any questions. That's
Question. Within the subset of sex trafficking within King County and Seattle, since the demise, the shutting down of Backpage.com, has there been a change in how sex trafficking is done in Seattle and King County?
Can I ask our law enforcement partners? Are we?
Are you able to speak to them? We can both speak to that. Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Kelly Mangiaracina, KELLYMANGIARACINA, and I'm one of the dedicated King County employees.
I think the issue of sex trafficking, of course, has been at the forefront of human trafficking for many years. Backpage was definitely perhaps in a space where sex trafficking was offered, and the sex trade perhaps was open and offered at the community at large throughout the country. However, I believe that since the down of Backpage, Seattle Police share perhaps that the space is no longer there to allow perhaps some space for the sex trade to take place in a way that perhaps we had some access to images and to be able to respond properly to those that were being victimized through Backpage. However, now there's not there anymore, and our numbers and our partners have definitely seen an increase of the sex trade coming back to the streets, and where people who are involved both in sex trafficking and the sex trade and the sex industry have experienced a level of severe crimes against them.
I'd like to echo what Swamirs has said. What we're seeing is that Backpage, which had a critical mass of sex trafficking on it, when that shut down, it moved to the streets. Our service providers such as REST, the Bridge Collaborative, which includes Youth Care, Friends of Youth, Nexus Youth and Families, the Organization for Prostitution Survivors, and Kent Youth and Family Services, are seeing more trafficking happening on the streets of Seattle and King County, particularly the North Aurora Corridor and Pack Highway South.
Any further questions? Great. Thank you all very much for joining us today and helping raise awareness to combat human trafficking. Very much appreciated.